Well, good morning, Wednesday morning here on the Market Day Report. I'm John Jenkinson, and I'm sure glad that you've stopped by and spent part of your day with us. It was an interesting USDA report out yesterday with the world supply and demand estimates, and there was a lot of numbers to crunch through. But on the overnight trade, the Globex trade, grains actually, well, we'd have to call it a bounce. Let's talk to Rich Nelson with Allendale Incorporated, McHenry, Illinois. Rich, would you call it a bounce on the overnight?
I would, and especially considering the fact we did have that sharp move down after the report and then came back a little bit. Maybe not a complete rejection of lower trade. I think we have to be honest about that standpoint, but it certainly was good news. Rebounding from the report on, certainly not too bad of a story here for us.
Does this give you any hope that maybe we've carved out the bottom in this grain market now?
That's actually a very good point, and a lot of people have been bringing up that exact idea here these past couple of days here now. I think in terms of the trades mindset, we all know that obviously we're going to head for some fall lows. The question is when and what price. And given the fact that we had some bearish news, that's actually a very good possibility. Also, a lot of people have last year's price action in mind, which from here on out actually was a little positive. So we'll see.
Rich, you mentioned before we went on the air about some of the crop insurance numbers from the FSA office. What about those? And the reason I ask that is because in the next report in October, that's when we're going to factor in some of those abandoned acres and we'll have more surveys.
That sure is right. And so we had this USDA report, obviously, at 11 o'clock here yesterday. But at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the Farm Service Agency released their monthly release for those crop insurance numbers for corn, soybeans, wheat, and various other products. Now, as far as the corn numbers, actually, we saw the numbers increase a little bit from the August, as you would expect. But by this point, they normally have about 99.2% of all crop insurance data already in hand now. So we can make some good estimates of what, in terms of what USDA may do to acres on next month's report. As far as the corn numbers, we do suggest that the crop insurance data implies about a 500,000 acre decline in planted acres, possibly on that report here for October. As far as the numbers for soybeans, numbers did imply actually maybe a little higher planted acres than expected might be seen on the October report. So more corn acres, maybe less soybeans.
And that still leaves a question mark as to what could be arising in that October report, doesn't it?
It sure does. And this one is considered by the trade maybe a little more of a solid report than the August or September surveys. This is maybe a little more accurate in terms of being closer to that January final estimate. So, yes, this certainly is something we got to watch for here. And will probably be a much bigger deal for supply determination than this September report here.
I see that we sold a little bit of soybeans to Mexico on the overnight here this morning, 167,370. Not a big amount, but we're still moving some of this grain out the door.
And that's actually certainly true here. And like we mentioned yesterday, we're trading at about a $3 to $4 per metric ton discount over Brazil. So we want to see these sales. They're great to see. I'm actually surprised USDA actually increased their new crop soybean numbers as far as the export side yesterday, especially considering the fact a lot of people could argue we're maybe behind where we need to be as far as new crop exports. So great to see. I want to see some more.
Rich, wasn't it interesting that wheat market came roaring back just before the settlements?
That's actually a very good point, too. I think a lot of people had kind of written off this wheat market as being the moribund trade of all the grains, and great to see they actually kind of led the way back. So I'm not going to say we got a clear bottom in this market, but good to see it, and certainly good to see the wheat have some strength there.
Did it hold some of the corn and soybeans from slipping lower after that report?
And that probably did. You know, we don't normally get a lot of leadership from the wheat market into corn and soybeans. Generally, it's kind of a follower. But I think in terms of the trade mindset, yes. And like you mentioned when you first started out talking here today, it also leads me people to wonder if we do have some type of beginnings of a low or something like that here for this market.
All right, opening calls here this morning then for the grains. What are you thinking? Mixed maybe to maybe just a little bit stronger?
We would. Let's do 1 to 2 higher corn and soybeans, which finished up 4.5 on the overnight, 4 1/4. Maybe those would be up 2 to 4 cents here off the open. So good news here. Let's see if they continue throughout the day, though.
All right, sounds good. Rich Nelson here with Allendale in McHenry, Illinois. Don't go anywhere. Rich and I will be back on the other side of the break. We'll take a look at that livestock trade and what to expect today. That's coming up next here on the Market Day Report. All right, back here on the report here as we get ready to visit again with Rich Nelson with Allendale. There was some livestock numbers in that report yesterday, and that usually doesn't get a lot of press, Rich. But what did those numbers really mean to the trade?
You know, we talked yesterday morning about this idea that USDA has some pretty aggressive numbers for fourth quarter production for both beef as well as pork plugged in. They did change those, but really not by much. In fact, on the beef side, they're still looking at a very large 7.5% year-over-year increase in beef production. Heck, recent rates have been only 3 to 5% higher, so they've got a pretty bearish number for beef in there. For fourth quarter for hogs, remember, all we're arguing about for hogs is how much of a record this fourth quarter will be up ahead. They actually raised their numbers, now 5.7% over last year. Heck, recent numbers have been only 2.4% higher. So on both beef and pork, they gave us some bearish numbers. Market reacted on the hog end, but maybe not that bad on the cattle end yesterday.
So why not the cattle end? Is it still waiting to see what happens with cash?
That's yes. That's probably the prime issue for us right now. You know, we have seen this most recent report we talked about on Tuesday morning about the end users maybe backing off their aggressive buying. That's still a big issue for us. We know that last year we had these problems for the next 2 to 4 weeks in front of us. This year, end user buying has been good in recent weeks, but maybe tailing off. Still a big question for us.
Interesting yesterday afternoon also, that box beef trade, we went inverse for the choice and select here in a pretty narrow range also.
Certainly true. I think a lot of people are basically looking at this market as having a question of whether we got this cash cattle low in or not. A good rebound on futures here in recent days, maybe some stability on cash beef. Like you said, though, this end-user procurement and these box beef prices, still a big question for us. I don't think people feel 100% confident that we do have a low end just yet for the beef side.
How much do you think we're going to be watching that Fed cattle exchange then for some kind of direction? Because we've got asking prices at about 107 on the live basis in the South, 167 plus. I even heard one asking price this morning at 170 plus in the North on the dress basis.
And that's a big question here for us. We only have about 1,000 head lined up. We'll probably see 1 or 2, maybe even three of those pens move. We'll see what actually gets sold. It certainly will be a big price determinant for us just ahead, 10 o'clock here Central Time.
All right. Anything else in this protein complex that bothers you? It just almost seems like it's kind of on that teeter-totter right now between being bearish and bullish.
And that's certainly true. And one question mark for us this morning on the pork end is that weekly report from USDA on Iowa and southern Minnesota hog weights came out. They actually raised them a bit more than people probably want to see. A week before, 279.8 pounds per head. Now 282. So over a 2-pound jump in just 1 week. Probably not what people want to see here today.
All right, Rich Nelson with Allendale Incorporated, McHenry, Illinois. Rich, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, and the grains, of course, are in their pause mode right now, but here in just a little bit, we'll open up the grains and see where this market wants to take us today.
Okay, thank you so much, Markets Editor John Jenkinson.